Alright, what's up everyone, OJ here. Welcome back to another video discussion. Today we're talking about The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2 and what is going down potentially at E3 because some new information has come to light, and I also wanted to clear up a few things that people that don't really know what they're talking about are discussing online, so let's talk about that. But before we get into anything, please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, click that notification bell to get my videos first. Now let's go ahead and jump right into this and start talking about The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2. Now, for those who don't know, I am a huge Breath of the Wild fan. Breath of the Wild is one of my favorite games of all time. I remember it came at a very difficult time in my life. I just got laid off from my job, and Breath of the Wild came out the weekend before. So essentially, I had so much time to play Breath of the Wild, and it really helped me mentally and also just to kind of get back into it and realize that there's more that I still need to do, right? There's more that I still need to explore. There's more that I still need to do in life. So it kind of just like correlated somewhere. I don't know. It's a weird feeling, but I'm pretty sure you guys have games out there that kind of just came about at the right time in your life where you were going through something and it really helped you get through that. And that's how I feel about The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. It really helped me get through a part in my life. So it really gelled with me in that way. But let's talk about what could be happening at E3. So first and foremost, it does seem like E3 will be all digital this year. It looks like they're not going to have an in-person event, which is unfortunate, but at the same time, I get it. I understand in terms of the safety and everything. So it looks like that's not going to be happening, but the digital event has started to go around that E3 will be planning something like that. Now, we do know about the Summer Games Fest and everything with Jeff Keighley, but E3 is where people kind of go to when it comes to the games. But the landscape has changed quite a bit from how it was before, right? Like before, it was like you kind of had to go to E3 because that's where all the media was. That's where all the video was. You didn't have YouTube. You didn't have all these other social media sites to get all the information and news from. So it was kind of like the old school place to go. But nowadays, any company can put on any presentation and get thousands, if not millions of people watching that around the world. So E3's significance has diminished just a bit. But that doesn't mean that there isn't still something that E3 can offer, and it does seem like E3 will have a digital event this year. And we all know that Nintendo is going to be there, whether there's an E3 or not. They're always going to have their E3 presentation. They always have it, and that's why Nintendo made Directs in the first place over a decade ago, so they can get information directly to the fans out there without the need of anybody else having to tell their story for them. So I do love that about what Nintendo did. But what is Nintendo going to do for Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild? Well, let's go over some of the stuff that I hear out there that's not exactly accurate, because we have people saying, oh, well, maybe they're just going to do a full-blown presentation on Zelda and nothing else at E3 like they did back at E3 2016. Well, I have some insight on that for you guys, okay? Because I was at E3 2016, but I was also covering Nintendo and covering everything in the industry back then as well. And the reason why Nintendo only had Zelda at E3 2016 is because they were prepping for the Nintendo Switch, which the reveal was later that October in 2016, and they didn't want to show any games at that point, which, remember, if you go back to that presentation, they didn't actually announce any new games at the presentation. They just showed some games. We saw Mario, we saw NBA, we saw like Skyrim or whatever. We saw a number of games, but they actually didn't talk about the titles and the names for them. It wasn't until the January 2017 presentation that they actually gave us the date and information and the names and the price and all of that. So Nintendo wasn't going to reveal all that information before it was ready. So that's the only reason why Zelda was only there, because the game was already announced on the Wii U 2 years prior, back in 2014, and they had that game, and obviously it was ready to go on the Wii U, but they delayed it so it can be with the Nintendo Switch. So that's the reason why they just blew out Zelda, because that's pretty much what they had. And the rest of the games definitely got moved over to the Nintendo Switch or got delayed or whatever the case is. It wasn't like, oh, well, we're just going to talk about Legend of Zelda this whole time because, yeah, Legend of Zelda. We have other games, but Legend of Zelda, no, that's not the case. What I see Nintendo doing, if they're going to have a huge segment on the Legend of Zelda, you can just go back to 2018, 4 years ago, when they did Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. They had a blowout of the game at E3, and people were actually kind of mad because they felt that too much of Nintendo's presentation was on Super Smash Bros. But that's the type of game Smash Bros. Is. It's big enough and it sells enough to have its own set presentation. So I can see Nintendo doing something like that. I can see them doing a regular general direct for like maybe 30-35 minutes, then doing like another 20-minute or 15-minute presentation only on The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2. I think that that's what they're going to do. just like they did at E3 2018. And I feel that most people are going to be pretty happy with that because we're finally getting new information on Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Obviously, Zelda has that like super clout when it comes to Nintendo fan base out there. Smash Brothers is really popular, but it hits a certain part of the market, whereas Zelda is just kind of like that game that everybody wants to play or at least hear about, even if they're not going to buy it. So I do feel that Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2, because of the anticipation, because of how big Breath of the Wild 1 is, this is going to be something to where you can showcase for 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and people won't be upset even if the general direct is shorter or doesn't have as much games there. But I'm pretty sure that this year's E3 direct is going to be absolutely incredible. I mean, we got the February direct and that was really good. So I'm pretty sure that the E3 presentation is going to be good. And for the most part, since the Switch started, there really hasn't been bad E3s or bad Nintendo directs. I mean, you can say there was the 2020 year, the COVID year, but that was the reason why, because people were scrambling, the developers were scrambling, people didn't know what was going on. It was tougher to put together your games. People were working from home or not working at all. So it was very difficult and a lot of stuff got delayed. So outside of that, I mean, Nintendo still put on some okay show. But they did have a bunch of Mario, which was pretty cool. And I got my Shin Megami Tensei 5 release date and trailer and all that, so that was cool too. But going back to Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2, what can we expect at this year's E3? Well, I think that we can finally expect a name for the Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2 instead of just calling it Breath of the Wild 2. I'm guessing it's going to have some type of name with it. Nintendo already stated that they haven't told us the name because they don't want any spoilers, because the name can kind of give away what some of the aspects of the game are, like previous Zelda games, like the Wind Waker, or like Ocarina of Time, right? Or Majora's Mask. So it makes sense in that way. But I do think that we're also going to get the release date of the game. Some people feel that the game is going to be delayed to 2023. I feel that it's going to be a 2022 game. I think that it's going to be this year. I actually released a video not too long ago talking about how there's some proof that the game was still coming out in 2022, but now there's been some new information, or more like just new speculation, because of Pokemon that's coming out this year, Scarlet and Violet, that somehow that pushes Breath of the Wild 2 to next year. But one thing that Nate from Direct Feed Games had to say is that he stated that he already knew that Pokemon was going to be a 2022 title. Also, Jordan Fringe, Pokemon superfan, also felt that that was going to be a 2022 title. But the big thing here is that Nintendo already knew, the Pokemon company Nintendo already knew that Pokemon was going to be a 2022 title before they announced the Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild for 2022. So if Nintendo was going to delay it because of Pokemon or anything like that, they could have just done it back then. There was no reason to still go forward with saying, hey, it's 2022 if you knew that Pokemon was already coming, right? So some people felt that, oh, Pokemon was announced and then all of a sudden it pushes things, right? But that's not the case. They already knew last year when they talked about it that Pokemon was coming 2022, and they still gave Legend of Zelda a 2022 release window. So I do think that it's going to hold true to that, and I feel that even if it's not completely ready, they're still just launching anyway. I mean, like, I don't see why they wouldn't. They just launched Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, and there was some stuff that they needed to do when it comes to patches and making the game run a bit better. Look at Elden Ring. They just launched it. It got delayed. It probably could have got delayed again to fix up some of the issues in the game. And they just launched it anyway, and people are excited and happy and fun and gave it a 97 rating. So even if there's some issues here and there and maybe could use like another delay, I don't really think that's going to be a problem at all. I think they'll just put it out there and maybe patch it up like a couple times, which kind of sucks overall. But at the same time, if you're still having fun and it's still out there and it's still really good like Elden Ring, then hey, it is what it is. But I do think that this game is probably going to be a bit more polished than the Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 1 was at launch, because they were porting the game. It was a Wii U game. You're porting it over. You don't know what code works as well. Probably have limited time. They were probably under a like deadline and everything. So I think that there was definitely some stress there with porting the game over to Nintendo Switch and getting everything working, especially because you're working with new tech, new hardware. But now at this point, the Switch has been out for a number of years. They've had a lot of time to develop it. They're not probably rushing through it. They're making sure that they're optimizing it for the Switch. Don't have to worry about another system, the Wii U or any other system. You just have to worry about portable mode and also docked mode, which they've had time to optimize for. And even if you go back to Breath of the Wild 1, the game actually ran better in portable mode than it did in docked mode. So I think that they're probably spending a lot more time with the docked mode and getting that up to snuff, making sure that everything runs smooth and looks good on there. And then of course they already have that optimization for the portable mode as well with that Breath of the Wild 1 engine. So I'm excited, man. I am looking forward to what they're going to do at E3. I think that there's going to be a big blowout there. Obviously, it's not confirmed at this point, but I'm guessing that we're going to have a big blowout at E3. We're going to get the release date. We're going to get so much information, and it's going to be awesome. And I think Nintendo's going to have a great year this year in 2022. But what are your thoughts when it comes to the Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2 and what they could be doing? Do you feel that there's going to be a big blowout of information? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. All right, guys, that wraps it up for this video here. Thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it. Please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, click that notification bell, and we will see you for the next video. Peace.